What's up, welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Skeleton Crew, the latest Star Wars series out in full on Disney Plus. This is a series that I think is coming to its conclusion with a lot of unfortunate circumstances because I think ultimately the reception to Skeleton Crew has been pretty positive. I think critically it was actually well received, and from corners of the fandom it was also pretty well received, which is not something we've been able to say with any consistency when it comes to Star Wars storytelling on Disney Plus. Of course, The Mandalorian season 3 followed by The Acolyte have not been the best, run of form. Obviously, we're very optimistic about Andor season 2 in April, but overall it's been a fraught time. Star Wars Skeleton Crew is a greater success than I would have possibly imagined. I think it's a very solid, self-contained show. It's fun, it's jet setting, we get some pirate storytelling, which is untapped well within Star Wars. We have some interesting lore implications that I wish were explored further. Overall, it's a fun, classic adventure story. The issue, of course, is that this is coming at a fraught time for Star Wars storytelling, and Skeleton Crew is being levied with expectations it doesn't really deserve if it was judged purely on its own merits. Because Skeleton Crew is not part of some grander Star Wars storytelling vision and is actually incredibly self-contained, and also because it doesn't feature any legacy characters, the show is unfortunately not a big hit despite the positive reception. And it's a bit of a shame that this show is most likely destined for the one and done treatment that a lot of stuff on Disney Plus has gotten, but that's just kind of where we're at. Unfortunately, Skeleton Crew is still pretty expensive, like most of these shows on Disney Plus are. It's a lot less expensive than The Acolyte, but it's not cheap by any means. When a show this expensive is as underviewed as Skeleton Crew was, the odds of renewal are slim. The Acolyte at least made the Nielsen chart in the beginning. There was a lot of initial interest in that show, which I think you could ascribe to the fact that it was being told in a new period. I had Jedi front and center. There's a lot of intrigue there, right? Visually engaging, etc. Skeleton Crew never charted on Nielsen once from the data we've seen thus far. Obviously, that lags out. It would be foolish to expect it to suddenly chart in the back half of its season. Ultimately, it's a show that's came and went. And again, as I've been saying, it's a bit of a shame because I think this show is very successful for what it is. Is this like the number one thing I would have liked from Star Wars, given how little of it we get these days? No, certainly not. Of course, I would always prefer something a bit more mature. You know, child protagonists, young actor protagonists, always a bit hit or miss, just in terms of acting quality, in terms of storytelling approach, things like that. All those caveats were borne out across this telling of Skeleton Crew. The kids were fine. They weren't spectacular, though. And while I commend the show for telling a definitive beginning, middle, and end, like classic, like actually completed their story, right? You know, given that we're destined to never see this show again, I hope at least some aspects can be explored in the comics. And I think a lot of this is ripe for comic storytelling, to be honest, because there were some interesting lore implications if you're like big in the Star Wars weeds like me. That being said, they weren't explored nearly enough. You're left with a lot of questions if that's something that interests you when you watch this show. So this is a Star Wars show that intrigues but doesn't really answer much, right? What was up with AT-AT and this planet, this hidden planet? Why was it hidden? Was it just because they had the money mint there? Was that the reasoning? Okay, fair enough. Why was it like a secret droid overlord? What was up with that, etc.? They not at Jord. Its backstory: Captain Silvo, Jude Law's character, he of many names. He was taken in by a Jedi on the run during Order 66, thus explaining some of his nascent force sensitivity and training and whatnot. Cool, for sure. I think that's perfect for a comic, to be honest. A one shot, that would make a lot of sense. That'd be nice. Um, yeah, and then, it's set in the New Republic. In theory, Adan could come back on The Mandalorian. I doubt it, to be honest. Mandalorian and Grogu, I'm not expecting any of these people to return. I'm not expecting to see Jude Law again, per se. But, yeah, again, like, we keep having the same conversations and the same thoughts about where Star Wars is at, right? Andor's final season comes out in April. After that, we have The Mandalorian and Grogu coming out. After Andor's done, right, that'll bring us to end of May, June. A year from then will be when The Mandalorian and Grogu comes out in 2026. And that's all we got, right? Ahsoka Season 2 has not entered production. that is still being written. Dave Filoni said as much during the premiere of Skeleton Crew. So Ahsoka Season 2 is far off, assuming they still make it. I assume they will. Any other Star Wars movies? James Mangold, Simon Kinberg, the most recent announced stuff. You can't put any stock into that until we get anything definitive about production, as we know. Anything from them, very, very far off. I'm optimistic about the James Mangold project coming to fruition. Beau Williman's also involved. He's been involved with Andor. James Mangold, of course, involved with Lucasfilm from Indiana Jones. I'm optimistic there. That being said, I'm afraid that Lucasfilm and Disney, to a lesser extent, will see the returns with the Acolyte, the returns with Skeleton Crew, and be like, these are stories without our heavy hitter characters, without the Skywalker. Something a lot of fans online say we need. We need Star Wars to branch off and become something else and not just spin the same wheels, retread the same ground if we want this storytelling to exist in the future like we all do. But then when Lucasfilm and Disney see the returns, that the stuff without the heavy hitters and the familiar faces and the familiar locations and conflicts and all that, that's the material that gets watched the least. Is that a quality question? Is it a character question? Is it a combination of both? Is it almost like a IP within an IP problem? Where, as we know, IP does the best in movies and TV normally, but does Star Wars IP matter more than Star Wars in general, right? Star Wars IP, aka the Republic and the Empire, right? Darth Vader, etc., right? I hope that's not the case. I take it's awfully cynical, right? I trust in Dave Filoni's creativity more often than not, but he's not the decision maker to end all decision makers, as we know. So I don't know. I think more than anything, Disney pulling back from Disney Plus. Star Wars is not the only thing they're doing that with. Marvel as well. Yes, they have a slate of MCU shows coming out this year. They were all filmed a while ago. They're not filming anything else on it and for the MCU on TV right now. Check that. There's nothing else in production. Daredevil, Ironheart, Wonder Man. That's it, and that might be it. For a while. So we're kind of in the same boat there. Star Wars needs to get its movies back on track. The TV is supplementary. This TV is basic. Leave the animation to TV. Star Wars Visions, the follow up to the Bad Batch, whatever that will be. That. But live action, I think you got to get general interest back to its peak levels or close to there, and you do that with movies. You don't do that with TV. Mandalorian Season 3, Andor, Acolyte, Skeleton Crew. Mandalorian Season 3 was still a watch. The other ones were not. Obviously, the critical reception is up and down among that group. So if you want consistency, I think obviously quality is important. But as we saw with Skeleton Crew, quality is not the only thing that matters. See with Andor, it's not the only thing that matters. So I think confidence in the brand needs to be reestablished, and that can only be done by movies. So that's where we're at, and that's where we're going to be at for a long time. I'm going to sound like a broken record whenever I talk about stuff. Am I looking forward to Andor? I'm over the moon for Andor. I expect it to be awesome. After that, though, it's going to be dry. So get ready. Let me know, though, what you think of Skeleton Crew. Do you agree it's a Star Wars show that is ill-fated by its timing, albeit its quality is kind of solid? Let me know. And for more TV reviews, Star Wars talk, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.